Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I am a wildlife food forest garden designer and my mic is too far away. Apologies if you caught the earlier live stream. I've had to re-live stream again because of technical difficulties with CAD. I've fixed it. It's great. Now, this is a new project. This is a 6-acre woodland in the south of England, and it's just a couple of 100 yards away from the coast. So it's got a really interesting, very, very mild microclimate. So I think there's like 1 day of frost per year or something, if that. And it's quite sheltered, and it's a sheltered spot. This is a sheltered spot in a sheltered spot in a sheltered spot. So there's some lots of possibilities for growing different plants. But the project is actually quite at an early stage. So had a fantastic time, absolutely lovely people, and just really thought-provoking and really, really interesting. And it kind of comes back to whatever size project you're working on, you've got to think about how you're using the space, and applies. There's lots going on here already, but it's also like the possibilities. There's loads of different possibilities, so it's about keeping that the options open and kind of setting out the framework. So if you've got your own small garden, this is like, where do you put the paths? It's exactly the same kind of principles here. So I'll just show you on the map here. The road runs down the what's that on west of the woodland, and there's an entrance, and the cars are parked at the top here. And then you walk down the track and you come around the corner. There's a barn here, east facing barn, and then it's all trees, and then there's a static caravan here, and then there's a space. So there's kind of two spaces which have potential for the forest garden side. Now, first things first, it's like, what is the space going to be used for? And this is an unanswered question as well. There's lots of different ideas about setting up as a kind of as a show garden, as a space for people to learn skills, as a for disabled people to come, to make it to give them opportunities that they don't get anywhere else, about a whole range of different possibilities. And it's just kind of knowing what to do with that space. At the moment, there's a static caravan here. There's a yurt, like a temporary yurt in this part down here. And its friends are staying in a caravan over here. And it's how do you can't really start to plant stuff until you know what you're doing with the space. And because apparently this was used for a variety of different things, but it was used as for forestry, for logging. This whole area, all around here, is all compacted, and that's it's a big thing to consider. If you're planting trees, if you have compaction, it means the trees their roots won't go down, and then they'll be prone to instability. So, and also lack of water. So you've got to make sure that the soil is okay for the trees to have enough traction. So if you have compaction, then you want to decompact, and you can do this like on agricultural land. You would use what's called a subsoiler or mole plough. And then in other situations, you can use there's an attachment for basically like a kind of big, great big kind of impact drill, which you kind of break up the soil with. So a bit outside, it's not something I know much about. I've done a bit of research about it, but it needs to be done if you're going to be planting trees somewhere. You need to make sure that you haven't got compaction, and this is a classic site for that. But this is the key thing. If you're putting tracks and paths in, there is absolutely no point decompacting everything and then having loads of tracks and paths again, putting them back down. So much better to plan the space, even if you don't know what you're going to be doing with the space. Much better to plan the space how you want it, and then do the decompaction where you want it. It'll be less work, because there's no point decompacting something that you're then going to go be compacting again. So that's the first thing. So it's like, how is this space going to be used? So I've kind of what I would say is divide the space up and make private, because you don't know what the spaces are going to be used for. You've got friends staying in a caravan. They need to be able to bring the caravan on site, for example. So any access points you need to make sure the bend's not too tight. You need to make sure there's enough width for the track. And then yeah, so that needs to be done. But you also need to make sure there's enough seclusion as well. So for kind of facilities that and also privacy, that if you can create hedges and you can create boundaries, not like not necessarily massive great big boundaries to keep people totally private, but just it's worth considering if you're going to do this and demarcate areas out and they're going to be used in a certain way. That's when you ought to be thinking about how to divide the areas, if you want them divided. Do you want them open? Do you want everyone sat around a big campfire in the middle? Or do you want some seclusion and privacy? And what do you want the access to be? So those are the kind of key questions for this kind of area here. So what I'm going with is a static caravan, a visiting caravan, and a yurt, a temporary yurt. They're the three kind of things. So I would say is think about dividing the area up into three different, that space into three different areas. On to the other side, there is I think it's water. It's like what do you call it? It's a a borehole, and there's a pump to get that, getting the water out of the borehole using solar panels. And really, what I would say is, oh, hold on, have I got an extra page? Is my face on this extra page? What I would say is, if you're going to kind of create, there's a barn there at the moment, which is really rickety, really quite, not in the best of shapes, and there's a plan to rebuild the barn. If you're going to do that, it is very much worth considering changing the orientation of the barn. If you're going to build it from scratch anyway, and the footings don't look all that, you're better to reorient the barn so that it's south facing, so that you can make use of a roof for solar panels. And the same with a static caravan as well. Keep it south facing. It's south facing at the moment, but keep it south facing. So that's the kind of key thing. And then if there's anything, in some respects, having the barn, we can still use that space later on. But if you've got the barn, it's better to have the barn on the other side of the track, because it's, you're not kind of like in the way and people going past. It kind of improves the flow of it as well. So I have created a temporary, there's some sketches in CAD just to get these ideas across. So let me go into that then. Oh, I was going to do that. I was going to show you the extra page. Bob, there I am. Okay, so let's get onto the layer. So this is a temporary layer. So what I've done here, I'll just get rid of the satellite so you can see more clearly. Well, I put the barn up here, so it's south facing, and it's going to get a lot more of the light. It's going to get load more light. So if you can have solar panels on it, that's where you want it, south facing. Make use of that roof. Also, make use of rainwater harvesting for any kind of new build. Rainwater harvesting and a kind of water. Think about the watering in advance. Originally, this is there is some raised beds down here, and building up the raised beds. But I would say far more important to get the barn there. More important to use that space. Maybe not necessarily so far back, but definitely facing south. This area here. It's kind of interesting. There's a load of subsoil or topsoil. Really totally recommend getting that soil tested and finding out what it is, what the composition of the soil is, and also what the the nutrient breakdown of it is as well. So the pH and the potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium, and what the nutrient breakdown is. Because I think from having a look at it, currently it's a wildflower meadow, but actually that is prime fruiting space for fruit trees, nut trees, and for fruit bushes, because it's south facing, and it's not, it's like, it's perfect. And I don't think there's actually that many amendments need to be done for that soil which is there. So get a soil test done on that, and then think about this space here. Those are the two things. Still, that space is still usable where the existing barn is, but maybe like more of a utility space. Don't know, but it's I kind of say if you're going to have anything, have it up here, have it this end. And then on this side, let me turn off that map so we can see get more clearly. On this side, this is where the existing caravan is at the moment, and this isn't like by any means the imagination. This is not like a final design. This is just some sketches. I'd say kind of divide the area up into 3 and think about the access to that. Now, what you can do, you can use bits of bamboo and string, and actually just peg out the space and see how it feels and see how it works. You want an access space for anyone who's like bringing a caravan in on site, and then you want to rig them up on a caravan and access utilities and stuff. So access to each of the plots, each of the kind of areas, but also you want that privacy as well. So play around with the different routes. I'm kind of saying it looks like from the original map when I went to the site visit, there wasn't that much space up here. It's that I think the trees have actually grown here. There's more kind of buddlier. That can be kind of cleared out and make use of that space. And then this corner is a bit tight, so it might not be the best call. It might be better to have a central path coming through with, so think about that. Think about kind of access, if there's any vehicular access, pedestrian access and privacy, and try out different layouts and different sized kind of areas for different uses. So that's what I'd really do. And you don't need to have a professional, an architect or a landscape designer to do that. You can do that yourselves as well. So really, really recommend getting that done, trying out the different spaces. That's what I pegged out is 3 different spaces. And then what I would say, and then back to this space over here, I'll call this one big space, like possibly the main forest garden, because this is prime real estate for fruit trees, south facing. There's a whole load of topsoil on here, subsoil or topsoil on here already, and there's some compaction up here, but that for me is like, that's going to be like the kind of focal point. If this is like a full kind of forest garden, I'd say really honestly go for it there. And then on that note, I mean, it's like things that you can do now as well in terms of planting trees. There's 2, actually I haven't put them all down here. There's 3 things that we can be doing. So firstly, it was quite, there were some spaces there, and I think there's quite a few of the trees have been blown down, and there's a few opportunities. And again, that's on the northern boundary and it's just past the track. Again, that's a really good site because there's not any kind of structures around there. That's a really, really good site for south facing for nut trees, like big nut trees like sweet chestnuts or for hazels or any other kind of nut trees as well. Sweet chestnuts are good because, I mean, there are loads of squirrels about the place. I think there were, but they're kind of big standard trees, and that's something that you can get growing now if you're okay about the space around them. So I put a few sweet chestnuts up there just as a kind of as an example. The second thing is to this boundary here, and the client was talking about fast-growing windbreaks to put on this southern boundary, possibly all around. One of the problems is, I would say willow, but willow doesn't grow. There's the Bowles hybrid willow, amazing stuff. I planted some sticks in a pot, and now they're like a metre tall now. It's absolutely bonkers how fast they grow, but they need full sun, so I wouldn't put them down there. But because there's also the question of deer, lots of deer south of England, I'm wondering about, and it's not fast growing, but I'm wondering about holly, native tree, shrub, and prickly, and like a double thickness holly. Again, I know there's kind of talk about getting the wood managed, I think it's a very, very good idea to kind of hook up with somebody locally, like a coppicer, and get that wood managed, but also to create that division between the garden and the woodland. Possibly look at holly, and it's relatively cheap as well. And so thinning out the woodland around the area, let more light in, but also give the holly a chance to grow as well. Got to be a bit careful about growing holly over on the, hold on a second, my points of the compass mixed up, on the west side, because you don't want, the holly will actually grow quite tall, so be a little bit careful about that. But holly is a kind of good candidate. Not sure if it's deer proof, you know. I think a determined deer would get through there, and I think there's plenty of other places the deer can get through anyway, but it would be a deterrent if nothing else. Okay, and then finally there is a walk down here. There's a small strip of land. I think make the use of that as well, with a view. Take off the lower branches and clear up some of the trees. Not get rid of them, but just clear up so you get a view down across the field over there, and actually make use of that as well. And then possibly put a bit of privacy, low shrubs in here, like 1.5 meters tall, so that the neighbour's kind of like, yeah, you're shielded from the neighbour. So I think that's worth doing too. Cool. Right then. So those are my suggestions, and there are notes as well. So I put notes online, and the notes are at notes.growed.uk Wildwood. So that's where all the notes are. All right. I hope that's interesting for those of you who aren't the client, which maybe is 1 or 2 people. I hope that's interesting and useful, and I'll send over some notes and things too. Okay, thanks for watching, and see you again soon. Cheers, bye.